News Channel 8 presents New Skills for Living with your host, Tom Lavin, a healthy plan for healthy living.
Hello and welcome to New Skills for Living, a show dedicated to healing and wholeness in our community. Today we're going to take a look at a number of topics that I think that you will enjoy and you might find meaningful, and you also might find them to be helpful. We're going to take a look at how we as human beings find meaning in our life. We're going to do a mindfulness exercise. A lot of you have heard of mindfulness. We're going to do an exercise about how do we do that type of breathing and create that moment of insight and clarity as well as relaxation in doing meditation. We're also going to talk about how we can develop an attitude of gratitude. We're going to talk about how we can forgive people who have harmed us as well as forgiving ourselves. We're going to talk about how do we make amends to people we have harmed. There are 8 steps that we can follow to make amends. And then we're also going to spend some time taking a look at the importance of attitude and serene and meaningful living. So I think we're going to have an interesting show today. And so let's go ahead and get started with the first topic that I mentioned, and that's the topic of how do we find meaning in our lives. By the way, I'm going to be referring to various newsletters. All of these newsletters are available on the website there at easeap.com. So if you go to my website, you'll be able to pull up all these newsletters that we're talking about. This particular newsletter that I'm talking about right now about finding meaning, when you scroll down on the website, it's the one about finding happiness. And when we're talking about finding happiness, we're going to be referencing Dr. Viktor Frankl's work on how we find meaning in life. And Dr. Frankl, of course, was a survivor at Auschwitz while he was darn near dying himself in the prison camp. And his mother was dying, and his father was dying, and his new wife was dying. He got anchored in the idea, as he had before Auschwitz, but even more so while he was in the prison camp, how do we find meaning in our lives? And that, of course, is not just a question that prisoners in Auschwitz wanted to answer for themselves, but all of us, as we walk through our lives, we want to know, what is the meaning of my life? And Dr. Frankl said there are 3 ways that we find meaning in our life. The first way is creative values. The second way is experiential values. And the third way is attitudinal values. So when we're talking about leading a meaningful life, of course, we're talking about not living a life of quiet desperation. Thoreau said most men lead lives of quiet desperation, and we don't want to live that kind of a life. Frequently when I ask people, when I teach these classes or when I'm doing psychotherapy, and I ask people what brings meaning to your life, they'll say love, my children, creating things in my life, being productive, making a difference in life. Very rarely do they say buying a new Mercedes or having a big house. No, we're going to be focusing in on today, what are the 3 main ways that we find meaning in our life? Creative values is what Dr. Frankl identified as, what do we give to life? We all are blessed with certain talents and virtues. And so Dr. Frankl said, what can you do to use your talents and gifts to make the world a better place? Now, it doesn't have to be in a big way. It can be in a little way, these little ripple effects, these little things that we do through our work, the way that we are a husband or a wife, the way that we are a father or a mother. Do we do that with kindness and generosity? Do we make a difference in people's lives? That's the ripple effect. The second way that Dr. Frankl talked about is called experiential values. So the first way is, what do I give to life? The second way is, what do I let life give to me? And what Dr. Frankl identified was that we find meaning in life when we do things that we love to do. So it's through love and truth and beauty and justice. Maybe it's going for a walk in nature. Maybe it's playing music or listening to music. Maybe it's creating a sculpture. Maybe it's loving someone like our wife or our husband, or loving our son or our daughter or our stepchildren, offering them love in their life. That's another way that we experience meaning in our life. Also through beauty, by what we create, or maybe walking through nature, taking a walk along the Truckee River, taking a walk through the forest up on Mount Rose. Those are ways that life gives to us. The third way is called attitudinal values. And attitudinal values is when bad things happen to good people, what attitude do we take? Do we have patience? Do we have strength? Instead of hiding under the covers and giving up, are we willing to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going through a hard time right now, I'm suffering, but what can I do to bear my suffering with grace and patience and dignity? And by doing that, we make a difference in the lives of other people. So that's how we find meaning in life, is through these three ways: creating something, experiencing truth and justice and beauty, and then bearing suffering with dignity. After this brief break, we're going to take a look at mindfulness and gratitude. Hello and welcome back to New Skills for Living. In this particular segment, we're going to take a look at a mindfulness exercise, and we're also going to take a look at the importance of having an attitude of gratitude and how can we do that in our lives. So when you go to the website, the newsletter you would be looking at is the newsletter that says accepting, choosing, and committing and taking action. The other newsletter you would want to take a look at is the attitude of gratitude. Okay, so let's get going with mindfulness now. You might have heard about mindfulness, and what is that? Mindfulness is basically closing our eyes, taking some deep breaths, letting our thoughts and feelings come up, and then letting them go, and then searching for guidance about, okay, is there something that I want to do about my thoughts and my feelings right now? Take some positive action, or do I want to just let it go, whatever my thoughts and feelings were, rather than worrying about them or perseverating about them? Do I want to let them go? So we just let them go, and then we focus on our values and what's important to us. So what I'd like to do right now is read this meditation called Accepting, Choosing, and Committing and Taking Action. You can go ahead, if you'd like to, follow along with me, and what I'd ask you to do is sit up straight in your chair, have both feet on the ground, go ahead and close your eyes and do your breathing and follow along with me while I'm reading this with you. Okay, let's get started now. Accept what is as it is. Slowly take a few deep breaths. Now go ahead and do that right now. Take a few deep breaths. Allow your thoughts and feelings to emerge and just be there. The ones you like and the ones you don't like. Take a few more deep breaths and let your thoughts and feelings be there. Now go ahead and take a few more deep breaths and let your thoughts and feelings be there. Not judging them and not trying to make them go away. Just let your thoughts and feelings be there. Accepting your thoughts and feelings does not mean you like them, and it doesn't mean you like the situation. Just let your thoughts and feelings be there. Let the situation be there. And then settle into accepting what is as it is. If you're having a hard time accepting what is as it is, go ahead and just accept, hey, I'm having a hard time accepting what is. That you really wish your thoughts or your feelings or the situation were different, but they're not. So we just need to go ahead and accept what is as it is. After accepting what is as it is, focus on what's important to you. Is there something about this that you want to change? Do you want to change your perspective? Do you want to change the situation? What do you want to change? Think about the change you can make, develop and plan a strategy, then engage in Nike therapy. Just go ahead and do it. Do what you think would be good. Take positive, assertive action. Lastly, if you can't change the situation and you're struggling with your perspective, just let it go. think about this for a second. If you can't do anything about it today, just let it go. Just go ahead and let it go. Let it go for today. Let it be. Let it go and move on with your life. Say yes to life and focus your attention on other people and other activities that you believe are important. And then lastly, this is the Attitude of Gratitude newsletter. And very briefly, let's remember that as good as those days are when we feel grateful, some days we don't feel grateful. It's a hard day. It's a rough day. But we can still have an attitude of gratitude. And so what we want to do, and you'll see this on the newsletter down at the bottom, whether it's a good day or a bad day, we want to stop and think, what are 5 things that I have to be grateful for today? What are 5 things that I have to be grateful for today? And then go ahead and write them down and think about those things. Then next, we want to share with people what we have to be grateful for, and then we want to pay it forward. Because we're grateful, we want to go ahead and share our gratitude and pay it forward and pass it on and make someone else's life better. Okay, so thanks for joining in those 2 exercises with me. And after this brief break, we're going to take a look at how can we forgive other people, how can we forgive ourselves, and if we've harmed someone, how can we make amends to those we have harmed. Hello and welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about a couple of really important things that we all encounter in our lives, and that is when we harm someone and we feel guilty or we feel ashamed of ourselves, how can we make amends to those people we have harmed? The other issue, of course, is how do we forgive someone? How do we let go of that poison when someone has harmed us? And then also how can we forgive ourselves? These are 2 newsletters that you can find up on the website when you go to easeap.com. So one newsletter will be entitled 8 Steps of Making Amends, and the other newsletter is entitled Forgiveness. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off on making amends. And so when we do harm someone, we feel guilty. We feel bad that we've harmed someone. Now, what are the ways in which we harm someone? And you'll see on the newsletter, I list the 17 ways that we can harm someone. Betraying a trust, breaking a promise, deceiving someone, abusing someone, neglecting a person, gossiping or slandering about people, breaking a confidence, when we create a negative, toxic environment in our home life or at work, being mean or manipulative or cruel toward other people, when we steal something from someone, when we humiliate someone or we treat them in a disrespectful manner, when we are unfair, when we accuse someone falsely of doing something, when we denigrate or put down something that somebody believes in, or when we violate somebody's privacy. Those are the 17 main ways that we harm other people. Now, when we do harm someone, of course, we feel guilty. And when we listen to our guilt, it prompts us and it says, hey, I don't like the way I feel. I need to do something about that. And so what are the 8 steps that we can take to make amends and heal ourselves and maybe heal the relationship? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to admit to ourselves, you know what, I really did harm that person. When I said that thing or did that thing, I really did harm them. So the first step is self-honesty. The second step is we allow ourselves to feel the sorrow. We allow ourselves to feel bad for the harm that we have done. We don't rationalize it, we don't minimize it, we don't deny it. We really feel our feelings. The third thing that we do, and this is very important before we go forward, we need to forgive ourselves for this. We need to say, you know what, I've made a mistake. I'm human. I forgive myself for that mistake that I made. The next thing we want to do is we want to forgive the person for any harm that they've done to us. Now, the next thing we do is we go directly to that person and we communicate to them exactly what we did. We say, I hope you will forgive me. I want to acknowledge this is what I did. I know that it harmed you. Then next we ask that person, can you forgive me? Can you find it in your heart to forgive me for how I harmed you? Then step number 7, we confirm with that person that we will do our best to never repeat that mistake again with them or with anyone else. And then lastly, we ask them, what can I do to make this up to you? I know I harmed you. I took something away from you in one way or another. What can I do to make it up to you? Now, next we want to ask ourselves, this is really hard to do. What can I do to forgive someone when they've harmed me? Now, when we don't forgive them, what that's called is resentment. That comes from 2 Latin words, re and sentir. And that means to think over and over again, to feel over and over again, which poisons us. And so at some point in time, we realize, hey, holding on to these thoughts and feelings, it's not harming them, it's harming me. I need to forgive them so I can be free, so I can be healthy, so I'm not ruining my health and ruining my sleep. So the first thing we want to do is we want to decide, first of all, I want to forgive them because this is harming me. And we make a list physically, how is this harming me? Mentally, how is this harming me? Emotionally, how is this harming me? To hold on to this resentment. The next thing we want to say is, who do I want to forgive? The next thing is, what do I need to forgive them for? What did they do to me? The next thing is, how do I feel about them today? Probably we feel resentful. We feel angry. We feel hurt. We feel sad. Are we willing to let go of those feelings? Do we want to let go of those feelings? The next question, there's that saying, before you judge a person, walk a mile in their shoes. Are we willing to think about that person and what might be going on with them? Then lastly, we go ahead and write this out and we say, this is how this person harmed me, and these are the steps that I'm going to take because I am willing to forgive them. Now, the interesting thing that we find is when we forgive someone else for the harm they've done, and we've said, okay, this person is human, and I forgive them, what we find is then we are able to forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we have done and the way that we've harmed other people. And then lastly, we want to ask ourselves, because all of these things are learning experiences in our lives, we want to ask ourselves, what have I learned from this? What have I learned from the fact that someone harmed me? It wounded me. It hurt me. For years I held on to that. What have I learned from this letting go process about myself and about other human beings and about life? Okay, so right after this brief segment, we're going to return to our last segment, and we're going to learn about healthy attitudes and also things that can create a serene and meaningful life for us. Hello, and welcome back to New Skills for Living, a show dedicated to healing and wholeness in our community. We're going to now be talking about important elements of living a serene and meaningful life, and then also the importance of attitude. You'll see these 2 newsletters. One is called Attitude when you go to my website, and the other one is called Serene, Meaningful Living. In the last segment, we were talking about the importance of having an attitude of gratitude, but let's back up for a minute and let's talk about the importance of having a good attitude. It's important in life that we're in touch with our feelings, that we know what our thoughts are, we know how we're feeling. But sometimes the mistake that we make is our feelings kind of run our life. If we're feeling sad, if we're feeling lonely, if we're feeling kind of depressed, or if we're feeling really highly elevated and we're really joyous, we kind of let our feelings guide our life. Now, what I want to talk with you about today then is the importance of having our feelings without our feelings having us. That's really the way a mature person lives. So we want to have our feelings, but we don't want our feelings to have us. Now, how do we do that? We do that primarily by being in touch with how important it is to have a good attitude in life. so that no matter what's going on, whether things are good or whether things are bad, we have a good attitude. We're trying to make the best of this life for ourselves and for other people. So I'd like you to remember that as I talk about these other elements of living a serene and meaningful life, the importance of having a good attitude no matter what's going on. So one of the things that's really important in living a serene and meaningful life, of course, is acceptance. So many of us, we get upset because people don't behave the way that we want them to behave, or the situation is not the way that we want it to be. So the first thing that we talk about in this newsletter on serene and meaningful living is, first of all, saying, you know what, I accept other people for who they are right now. And again, we want to remember that acceptance doesn't mean we like what's going on with that person right now, but we accept who they are, and that's what's going on. The next thing, of course, the next challenge in terms of acceptance is accepting myself for who I am. We accept ourselves for who we are. One of the things that really has destroyed so many people's lives is that we're ashamed of ourselves, and we don't like ourselves, and we don't accept ourselves for who we are. We put ourselves down, or we're really perfectionistic, and we're never good enough. We can never achieve that goal. So one of the things that I frequently talk with people about in classes that I teach and with my patients in therapy is it's so important that we accept ourselves for who we are. Another thing that's important, and there's kind of this fancy word, and the fancy word is vicissitudes. And what vicissitudes means is into every life a little rain must fall. There is a balance in life. There are good things and bad things that happen in all of our lives. One of the ways that we sabotage ourselves is that we overreact when bad things happen. And so if we can accept, and this is another really fancy word, it's called equanimity. And equanimity means that we just accept things the way they are. We know that good things will happen and bad things will happen, and we just need to go with the flow, and that good things will come from this. Why? Because we have an optimistic attitude. Now, when I'm talking about optimism, what I'm talking about, it's like that little boy that walked into the barn and says, with all this poop, there has to be a pony somewhere, which means that we always look for the good in things. So remember that, please, as you're going through your day, to look for the silver lining, or be like that little boy, to look for the good in life. Another thing that's important is courage. And when we're talking about courage, I want to remind you of the importance of Nike therapy. When we've looked at our values and we know what the right thing is to do, rather than procrastinating or hesitating or blaming or passing it off on other people, we want to engage in Nike therapy. Just do it. And then lastly, if there's nothing that we can do about the situation in life, we just want to let go. Just picture yourself right now, rather than struggling with something and trying to change people, places, and things, just let it go. Let it be. Take a deep breath and focus your life on other values where you can do something about that. You'll see the website up on your screen, easeep.com. That's where you can find the newsletters. We'll see you again next month. Take good care of yourselves.